Hi, my name is Dan Tans, and today I'm very fortunate to have Liz Hannan here, who is kind and gracious enough to talk with us about her experiences with her child, who's now a teenager, and school and inclusion and things like that, family. So I'm just going to let Liz introduce herself. So if you could start by introducing who you are, telling us a little about your family and your story.
Okay. Um, yep. Thanks for having me
Oh,
on to
totally. Yeah.
talk about this. So I have my son Michael is a freshman in high school, and then we have two older daughters. One is in college and one is in graduate school, and they both went to Southwest High School, and um, and Michael went to K through 8 at Lake Harriet and now is in his freshman year at Southwest. We have very close family. We have done a lot of traveling as a family. We have lived in Southwest Minneapolis Michael's whole life and do a lot in the community.
Okay. Tell us a little about you. What is your background, just so we have a little picture of who you are?
Okay, I grew up in this area and I have let's see what did and so after
I snuck in that question.
yeah, no, that's okay.
I should
I
have
just
asked you earlier.
so I have worked in publishing, and I do some freelance editing, and I work part-time for the University of Minnesota, um, working in schools, which is very interesting to me, and doing data collection for the research that they're working on.
Okay.
And I went to school at the University of Minnesota, so and I grew up around here too. So
Okay. Um, did you go to high school in Minneapolis or no?
no, I went to
Oh,
high school in Watertown.
okay. Okay.
Yep.
So
Well,
I'm just going to go down to the next question that I have for you. What at what stage did you start thinking about your hopes and dreams for Michael, who's now, you said, a freshman at Southwest?
yeah.
So thinking back to like when he was first a baby, or when did it start to kind of enter your mind? Like, what's your big picture idea for Michael? Or I mean, at what point does that happen?
Yeah, yeah. I think like for all kids, I mean, just kind of from day one, it was a little scarier with Michael because we, for health reasons, we weren't sure how much that was going to impact his life. And then uh, I think basically there's a lot more worries with a kid with special needs, but life just keeps going, and he's got two older siblings, so we were just and lots of family around, and we traveled, and so Michael really has done everything that all the way along, so we just kind of have always looked for him to continue that, just to be participating in everything he can. And so yeah, I guess from early on, I mean, he went to Fraser for preschool, which is very inclusive, and so then we just um, have just been looking for that for him, and all the way. So
Um, so have you kind of had a thought of what you envision as like a future dream for Michael, or is that something that you're not sure about yet? I don't know how, when people think about when.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, that's that you do more of that with because you're asked to do that more with a kid with special needs. So in a way, you are more involved in kind of helping to shape that than um, trying to identify what their interests and skills and talents are and kind of trying to find those outlets. Whereas a typical kid, they might ask, see something and ask to do it more. They're a little more driving it. But I guess so. I have to remember what the question was. So it
Well,
was,
I guess it was just thinking about his your vision of what Michael's
yeah, yeah, okay.
future might be. In your opinion,
Well,
Michael obviously is going to have his own ideas about things, but you know,
yes. Yeah, so we want him to learn as much as he can. We want him to be, to be responsible and accountable and just kind of be a good citizen, be a good friend, be a good family member, just sort of, but also then just we fully expect him to have an independent adulthood. He wants to go to college. He, everything that he's seen his sisters do and all of his friends and their friends, that's what he wants to do. So we'll, support him and make it happen. So I think that the vision for Michael isn't all that different from our other kids.
okay. So when you started preparing to send Michael to school, Fraser, was that his first school? You said
Yeah.
okay.
Hmm.
Uh, did, did you feel like what you were experiencing was what you expected, or were there surprises? If you can remember back to that time, it's a while ago already,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. Well, Fraser was a great beginning place because it was just this natural, inclusive environment, um, and it prepared us to expect that and to look for that. And when he started, uh, so each transition is sort of a scary moment. It's like a bit of a cliff, and so going and leaving Fraser, and then going like, what's next? And um, so we were looking for something in the community, not far away, and something that we really actually didn't know what kind of supports he would need as looking at it, and so we wanted him to go to a school and then basically in the area. So
hmm.
that's how we ended up with Lake Harriet.
Okay. So when he first started at Lake Harriet, that's a transition, and you said transitions were kind of a scary time. So
Yes,
that what grade was that? That was like
kindergarten.
kindergarten. Okay.
Yeah,
How was the transition to Lake Harriet?
it was good. I mean, it was kind of surprising though, just because we had had such an inclusive um, experience at Fraser, then I kind of expected the same. And then as you go along, you realize, so that's happening. So you just kind of find out little things as the more you're at school or the more you talk to people and find out either what you're missing or
Yeah.
where your child is during the day. So then it starts to get your kind of parental radar tingling, and
Hmm.
just kind of knowing that you have to really pay attention and get in there and find out and talk to people and how involved.
You've always been very involved and very much an advocate for the like programming and the philosophy of education that I think you thought was best for Michael.
Yes.
And I just remember you were always very interested in him being included in as many opportunities for that as just were possible. And you
Yes.
always had
Yeah.
like a conversation going about that, and we're always kind of checking, is this something that is happening today, or is there something that we can do to work it out for this
Yeah.
month, or
Yeah.
um, did how did you maybe I'm inserting a question here that's not in this list, but how did you develop the advocacy to bring to the table? And when I say the table, I guess I mean like the IEP meeting, like the individual education program meeting, where there's a bunch of school staff sitting around,
Yeah.
and I think it's very easy just to probably just show up at this meeting and be talked to,
Yes. Yeah.
but having the ability to feel like you're an advocate for what you want, and what you feel is right, I think is something that you had. And just wondering, how did you develop that, and where did that
It
come
does
from?
develop over time. Like, I think I got better at it and realized more of my role. And I think that I was sort of a reluctant advocate at first. Like, it's not always so comfortable to be inserting yourself. I mean, it'd be great to just drop your kid off and have them come home and have milk and cookies, and have them sit down and do their homework. So you have to be. So I guess, sort of. It definitely was a progression. I think that I realized, and am still realizing, kind of how constant it has to be, and especially with a child that doesn't um, communicate about their day that much. So you really don't know. It's kind of a scary thing, with a vulnerable child. Like, not that I was really worried of huge problems, but just like, you don't, like, if I asked, trying to get a handle on how often Michael was in the um, general ed class versus special ed room,
Mhm.
because it was that was always sort of a hard thing to decipher. So the more, so I just needed to ask in as many ways as possible, and then just kind of speak up, and really need to be a strong advocate with a kid with special needs. And it's not always something you want to do.
Yeah.
But you do get better at it, I think, and just because you get more confident and more experience with it. So um, yeah. So it is. I guess that's what was shocking to me. Like, even so, even if you're not changing schools, um, and you're not at one of those big transition moments, like
Hmm.
each year, sometimes it's started over, and because you kind of, or even at the beginning of the year to the end of the year, you kind of feel like, I thought, now we're all set. We've got this down. Everyone knows what should be happening, and it's just kind of it's life, just is
Is that
all it
because
is.
moving from one case manager to the next, or just a whole new year with new teachers?
New teachers, yep, every year, and for sure every time, so so yeah, so we had case managers in for a number of years, so that wasn't such a big transition. But yeah, new teachers every year, and uh, yeah, so
Hmm. Can you talk about some of the? This is one of the questions here. Can you talk about some of the struggles and challenges that you experienced in working with the schools? It's kind of a general question. Just
yeah.
what comes to mind when you think about things that just kept coming up that felt like a struggle to you?
Um, yeah, I think when Michael was younger, just the thought that, if I think the groove is so deep in the way things are done, that you kind of come out, but you of the groove, and be in, like, we'd say, well, we wanted Michael to be in the general ed class, and then there was always this assumption that he wasn't going to get what he needed there, and then, or that I suddenly in SEA had to be in the special ed room, so then Michael went with them. So things like that, where it just, like, he kept kind of getting sucked back into the special ed room. That was a real challenge to kind of get a handle on, and try to, how do we change this? And
Hmm.
and a lot of it is just having a case manager who understands what you're talking about, and
Hmm.
then can work. How do we work? And just kind of honesty is really uh, helpful too. So you're not trying to be a sleuth and really try to figure out, like, where is he, and trying to, quiz him and quiz his friends and everything. Like, if you can just really get a straight answer, it's
Yeah.
so helpful. And if you know that people are trying and working towards the same uh, goal then, or trying to get to where you want, then it just is so much better and so much more relaxing
Hmm.
when you're not assuming something isn't being done. So that's kind of a struggle and a challenge.
Hmm.
Or another one is if kids with disabilities are lumped together. I still I've always heard references of they,
Hmm.
and I think, well, are we talking about my son or they? So it's got a bunch of kids.
Yeah.
Or if the bar is set so low, like what could Michael's participation? Oh, you want him to be in general ed? Well, what could he do? Just kind of, you can just see it in people if they don't a think that your kid should be in their classroom.
Hmm.
If they don't, and I've heard this too, is if you think if they don't see the reason
Hmm.
for, say, for Michael to learn about a topic, science, or like how is he going to, but
Hmm.
whoever has to defend their reason for learning things, so it just, so that kind of stuff is
Hmm.
kind of ongoing,
Mm.
just comes up, and
That must be
I,
exhausting.
yeah,
Exhausting and frustrating.
that's why I have the circles under my eyes, but it can go well. So those, yes, whether the struggles and challenges, and those are kind of that sort of those are some things that come to mind.
Hmm. Um, Here's a pretty general question. Maybe it's too general. What were some of the successes that that you felt you've had, or Michael had, or as a family you guys have had in inclusion in education?
We've had a ton, and some of them are just some things that are so wonderful are just small things. Like if you see, like I just like to see Michael in the hall in his, putting his stuff in his locker
Mm-hmm.
and chit chat with the other kids in the hall. And to me, that, and then moving to the class together, leaving school, and then high fiving a couple kids. I mean, to me, that is just, you know, so wonderful. So, um, just where he will have interactions with um, students in class where he, it's not like, sometimes he's had some very special things happen that have just been phenomenal, where he's maybe chosen to be part of a videotape compilation of like Harry was, and and then in order to do that successfully, then a lot of people were involved in helping him. I think you held up cue cards or something.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
um, but yeah, where he's able to sign up for something and participate fully, where he when he learns something, he really learns it. So if he was included in a project and we hear about it on the, about some social studies topic, and then we hear something on the news, now that enriches his life, and he knows, about current events. And so um, that's sort of a rambling answer, but I would say so. And then the more connections that he makes inside and or outside of school or in school extracurricular activities, and the more that makes a successful inclusion in school. So, like his relationships are strengthened. Um, Kids, if he has had challenges with speech, then kids maybe are more used to knowing what he's talking about, or if they've seen a behavior, they can kind of goose him along, where an adult might not get the same positive uh,
So
reaction.
and
Yeah.
Michael's had just a number of sort of extracurricular activities that he's been
Yeah.
doing. So when you talk about um, building opportunities for successes in school through having like these extracurricular relationship building times that
Yeah.
can you what sorts of can you kind of maybe list off some of the things that he's done extracurricular, whether they were sports or related to the school or outside of the school or anything like that?
Yeah. Yeah. So he's been uh he wanted to be on the basketball team, at school, the middle school basketball team, and he went to tryouts and everything, but there were a lot of kids trying out. So then we just asked if he could be the manager, the coach, and the athletic director. And so that way he wasn't taking some of their spot of
Could you
some,
say that part again? That just you
sorry,
cut out for 1 second. It got it blitzed for a second.
basketball team at Lake Harriet.
Okay.
And so he tried out, and we didn't expect him. And I talked to the coach and the athletic director, and we said we don't expect him to, then be placed on it, but he wanted to go through the experience. We wanted him to have the experience of trying out with all the other kids. I mean,
Okay.
that's a real community building event. And then when when there were too many kids and some were going to be cut, then we just asked, or I think maybe the coach even suggested that maybe he could be the manager. And so then he got to participate
Hmm.
and um, go to practice and just have that moment where kids are gathering for something that Michael enjoys,
Hmm.
and they have that camaraderie, and then that kind of then. So he just had a great experience, and
Hmm.
when the team was losing, which was or losing badly or winning well, then Michael got to go in at the end of the game, and so then if they were losing badly, then it became a win for everybody because Michael being out there made everyone cheer, and um, so all those kids that were on the team, then there were, there's like a banquet and all those things that all kids love that we want him to experience. So,
Hmm.
um, so young dance, he's been in young dance class.
Okay. That's an outside of school activity,
Yes, that's
right?
outside of
Okay.
school. At school he was in. He went to Minneapolis Kids. That's a before
Hmm.
and after school program. So that was really a nice casual way of having freedom to choose activities and hang out with kids without the parents around. That's key. It's like moments where he could be independent at school and
Hmm.
hang out with kids. And yeah,
Okay. So maybe some structure, but not necessarily somebody bearing down and orchestrating how it
yeah,
goes.
yeah. Just so he can, yeah, have some freedom. Because I
Okay.
think that's what kids with special needs don't get a lot of opportunities for freedom. And yeah.
And I I remember Michael would what was the barn was it called the Barnaburkey?
Oh my gosh.
He did this
Yes.
ski event. You could tell that story about that?
Yeah. He was chosen to, I think he had to fill out an application, and but then you have to get um, nominated or whatever for it. And I know that his homeroom teacher nominated him, and then Mr. DePerry chose him to do it. So it was a real big honor to get to go with middle school trip to the kids' Birkebeiner, the Barnaburkey.
Never know
But
what it's actually called. The Berkey, the Barnaburkey, Birkebinder.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So, but it's this. I think Mr. DePerry's been doing it for 20 years, and Michael got to go. They have he loved the idea of going to Mr. DePerry's home and town and his Native American
Oh.
language all over the building and everything. So that was super cool. And oh my gosh, but the things they got to do, and Michael was just in the thick of it. And for the actual race, Michael was in the race, and it was super cold, and the kids were flying by him and cheering him on. But then pretty soon he's the only one on the course with me trotting along behind him, and he wanted nothing to do with me. So luckily, these and I was worried that they were going to get to the finish and everybody would leave. But as we got closer, and some ski patrols had sort of given Michael some guidance and a little shortcut through the woods, um, the whole middle school group was at the finish line cheering for Michael, and he won. He won the Barnaburkey, and he feels like he won, and it was just, I mean, I kind of get tears in my eyes thinking about it right now. It was just so amazing. So that was one of those moments that was just, he'll just always remember it, and I will too. Yeah.
Hmm.
And all the kids. So that's the thing. It's the community of all the kids coming together, and the kids get it, and they're all over it. They're
Hmm.
including him.
Sometimes it seems like the adults don't believe that the kids will get it,
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
but they do. Um, yeah, let's look at this next question. Looking back, and maybe this is a difficult one, but is there anything that you would do differently, or maybe not, but just knowing if you could go back in time, knowing what you know now about how to navigate the school system, the team, teachers, even working with Michael. What
Yeah.
would you? Is there anything you would approach differently, or what do you think?
Yeah. I think that I would go to more advocacy trainings early on, like Pacer and ARC put things on, and I'd go to more the Special Ed Advisory Council meetings. So those things just, I think they just really get you grounded in, like, that you're not questioning that you're doing the right thing, that just kind of knowing what's possible, what's not, or what's being worked on, and then just kind of how to go about it. I think knowing more, like, just kind of the definitions of some things, least restrictive environment,
Hmm.
um, the idea, the law, just sort of educate myself better with those facts, I think,
Hmm.
early. Yeah.
That's good because if parents are watching this and their kids are on the edge of starting a program, it's probably good to hear what somebody would do if they could go back and at this
Yeah.
early time. So you
Yeah.
said go to look into Pacer or ARC. Could you just
Yeah.
briefly say kind of what that is so people know?
Yeah. So Pacer, and let me just think, I'm not sure what it stands for, but they are an organization and they offer these seminars, and they're free and they're awesome, just kind of covering, like, what do you need to know about IEPs, just kind of breaking things down. And they have um, some really practical tips on what are your rights, what are your kids' rights, what does this look like. So I would say I didn't really go to those. I went to a couple, but I think that I would have done that earlier. So
Okay. And I know Pacer even offers like support at meetings, like if you can get somebody to come along with you or.
yeah, and I think ARC does as well. So you can get you go. ARC is another resource, and they provide. Yeah, both of them have advocates, that parent advocates that you can talk to, and find out if you need somebody to come along. Which, that's never a bad idea. I think it's always, yeah. I think early on I sort of worried about what kind of impression that would give if I brought an advocate in, like, but I think I wouldn't worry about that.
Mhm. It is kind of a there's a balance where you don't want it to seem like you're accusing the school of not doing something right,
Yeah.
but it seems like if these resources are available, why not use them and just get the
Yes.
most out of it? It seems
Yes.
like I think that makes a lot of sense to use those resources if you feel like you could use that support.
Yeah.
Um,
And then if the meeting, like the IP meeting, we've had some where it got really emotional, where I got really emotional, then you sort of lose your ability um, to attend to the topics of the meeting. So if you have an advocate there, I think that's less likely to happen, because then you just kind of have more confidence that someone's there to help you.
and there's so many acronyms and
Yeah.
like
yeah, sort
abbreviations,
of.
even beyond that, there's so much kind of legal and weird stuff that it doesn't really, you don't hear it every day. So
Yeah,
the make heads or tails of that when you're sitting in a room with 8 people or 10 people, it's kind of
yeah, yeah.
all. And I don't know. I mean, if it feels like when 8 or 10 people are kind of looking at you, wondering what you're going to think about what they have to say, if that
Yes.
feels awkward.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a lot of tips that you can get, like that make it much easier, and ways of including your child, and just kind of, yeah, just a lot of really good practical tips that I I think that if you get that information early on, then you're just more
Hmm.
prepared. Um, and yeah,
Um, I gave you this list of questions. A couple questions I have here maybe are redundant, but we'll just run through them. Best of times and worst of times in Michael's school experience. Do you have any memory of like something where you just wish, oh, that happened. Why did that have to happen? Or wow, that was great. I know
yeah,
anything come to mind that we haven't talked about already? Or
yeah. Well, I think I think that the worst of times is probably kind of maybe we talked about it a little bit, but I just you know anytime somebody just, I mean, you really realize that somebody wasn't wanting your child, Michael, in their class, wasn't seeing the point of it, was very dismissive uh, of what would happen, and why we want, just of our desires. So just kind of, then, I mean, where do you go from there? So I mean, those are sort of the worst of times. Or
Mhm.
didn't I like I remember when he was, we thought, oh, band would be good, when band started up at school. But
Mhm.
I was just crushed when they said that at that time that he couldn't be in it.
Mhm.
And it's like, really? There's no room in the room? Like you would take up too much room, or you can't give up a drum set for him, a place. So I think those sorts of things, and I think some of those things are getting better.
Uh,
Um, Definitely. But so then, those are things that it's sad to give up a little bit of a dream, but then you do have to kind of say that battle isn't what I'm gonna, I'm not, that isn't worth it. I'm not going to change that person
mhm.
um, and their attitude. I think a lot of it, the worst of times, is just when the culture isn't inclusive, or uh, yeah. So that's what I would think. And best of times, did you say that? Or
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, okay. So best, um, and I think best of times would be situations when a gen ed teacher uh, took Michael in as one of their students in the classroom, was responsible, rather than the SEA in the back of the class, or the special ed teacher, whatever, just sort of took responsibility at, this is one of my kids in the classroom. And also when they're open to collaborating with us and with the case manager, and trouble, anytime we could help troubleshoot, because you need a big bag of tricks sometimes.
Hmm.
You can't just have one trick,
Hmm.
because it'll work for a while and then won't. And then you just, a lot of times with Michael, and I think a lot of kids with or without special needs, like, you really can't necessarily figure out why is this behavior happening, but it's telling you something that
Hmm.
isn't, that needs to change, rather. And so then how could we, you know, get past it? So
Hmm.
anytime, those would be the best of times. Anytime we could help, um, we had good communication, and um, could help problem solve about
Hmm.
things. But yeah, so many best of times things. He's had a great experience. Um, I'm just trying to think.
Michael's always. I remember when we had him at Lake Harriet, he was always just really integrated into the flow of the all the kids, and just everybody knew him. He knew everybody, and Everybody would always be checking in with him, and he was like, it seemed like he was like the mayor of Lake Harriet, like had all these everybody just was always checking in and had these
Yes.
friendships.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
to me, that was like a huge success for Michael.
Yeah. I
I mean, I know
agree.
that like some people when they think about school, like what is the point of school for for anybody would be, well, the first thing that comes to mind, well, you gotta get your education and learn. But when I think back to the point of what school was for me, it was being with my friends and turning into a person. You find out how to be a
Yes.
person by
Yeah.
talking to these other kids and dealing with the different teachers
Yes.
and then yeah, you'll learn some things, but it's really so much of it is just about like being a human being and interacting with people and learning how to do that.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And I think that I'm glad that you mentioned that because I think that's a big part of why we've always known that it was important for Michael to be included in the general ed because he is such he would have good role models then,
Hmm.
of behavior that in that nothing
Yeah.
negative about behavior elsewhere, but I mean just that he would have just the whole environment to observe and to have good role models because he would be very apt to imitate
Hmm.
something fascinating that maybe he shouldn't be doing.
I think we all are.
Yeah.
If we're around something long enough, it's going to
Yep.
start being what we do. I mean,
Yes. Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
um, I'm going to look at this. We still have about 6 or 7 more questions, so I'm just going to keep rolling through so that I don't keep you all day here. But what I'm going to say, what were the biggest challenges with including Michael? And did those challenges change over time? I mean, maybe the challenges were external, maybe some were internal, like within him or out that beyond his control, or maybe completely not even related to Michael. But I mean, what were in your mind some of the biggest challenges?
I think that some of the biggest challenges have been and probably will continue to be his whole life, and are just kind of people's perceptions and assumptions. Like if they ever, uh, make an assumption based on the way he looks, and then knowing that he has Down syndrome, and then that just kind of low expectations and assumptions because of that. So, like, yeah, assuming what he's capable of learning, what he's capable of doing, his emotions, just kind of what, kind of defining who he is by that.
Hmm.
Um, and so I think that, and then biggest challenges, I think just kind of, uh, I think again, just kind of changing the culture, like how the culture has been at school where it has not been inclusive
Hmm.
and just trying to change that. I mean, that's huge, and it does make it very hard and very a lot of work, but
Hmm.
just kind of helping to people to see like what it can look like to have a another child in the classroom, maybe a child with different abilities, and what they should be working on, what they could be working on.
Hmm.
So I think that that's the biggest challenge is to and I think if you have a culture at the school, I mean, you really need the support from the bottom to the top and the top to the bottom. Just
Mm,
kind of,
yeah.
it's a shift from what has been at Minneapolis public schools, and I know that uh, they're working on it but that's huge challenge. Yeah. So, and then, yeah, I mean, if you want to, a parent can ask for that and know that it's the right thing, but uh, that's all, pretty big system to try to.
Right. Well, I think, and then this kind of flows into the next question, which is, how has your advocacy, your engagement shaped Michael's experiences? I'm just trying to imagine what Michael's experience would have looked, how it would have looked different had you not, you know, been an advocate the way you were, because
Yeah.
it is very different for kids in if there's a special ed program and there's a flow into the special ed program. There's sort of like a standardized way that a school will run special ed.
Yes.
So
Yep.
as a parent who has an idea of what is best for their child, it seems like you've shaped the outcome for Michael and your advocacy. So I'm just wondering how would it be different had you not done that? Had you not been as much of an advocate, do you think?
Yeah, I think that he partly I think that he wouldn't have been in general ed as much, and I think that he wouldn't have the same relationships that he has with kids, and then he wouldn't have had as strong of a support network that he has now going forward because he we really rely on just this safety net, this net to catch him if he gets off track or just kind of uh, uh, and it's a safety net and it's a launch pad, so then he gets to do extra things,
Hmm.
um, or if he slips, somebody's there to kind of catch him up. So what? So I think that I know that it makes it harder. It's, as you said, it's probably kind of exhausting, but it's so worth it to know to get him connected with people, and something like lunch. Like if kids are coming from a special ed room with the aides into the lunchroom, and then they're kind of protected at a table, and maybe they'll bring a mainstream kid over or not. So that it's hard to, if you don't have good communication skills, to kind of um, navigate a whole lunchroom of people. So you need, so I think just little things to get him hooked up to that we thought of, and that was one thing that we're always advocating for, just kind of the little things that make a difference that would set him up
Hmm.
for success. But so our advocacy is, I think, just kind of, it's sort of a constant um, but gentle pressure kind of that we have to be applying,
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
uh, yeah,
That's important for people to hear, I think, who may be
yeah,
entering into a relationship with a school, because I think it could be very easy to assume that the school will just they know what they're doing, or they do know
yes,
they may know what they're doing, but they
yeah,
may not their interests may not be 100% aligned with what your interests are.
yes,
So
yeah,
that advocacy is really critical, I think, for parents.
yeah, yeah, I think so too. Um, yeah.
Can you talk about, speaking of advocacy, could you talk about the your experience with the Special Education Advisory Council,
Yes,
and what that is, just a little bit, and
yeah.
just say, so what is it? What was your experience, and what did they do?
So it's Special Ed Advisory Council. Every school district has one, and it's made up of um, special ed parents, and it's a monthly meeting. It's not just made up of special ed parents. It's getting together between the school district and so you have some teachers that come. You have the directors, special ed directors that come, and then various people in different positions in the district. So they these meetings, they talk about different subjects, and the parents that come can advise the district on what they think should be done, and it's advocating for the whole district. So it's bigger than your kid. It's for the kids that whose parents can't get to the school
Hmm.
and ask for things, or so it's definitely bigger than your kid, but it helps your kid. So it's all pushing the program forward. Um, so it's been wonderful, and I would hope that more people could get to the meetings, or if not, we've started to do like live streaming of the meetings, which is nice. So if people can't get to the meeting because they've got kids at home and
Hmm.
can't get away, or for whatever reason there's a blizzard, they can participate that way or send in questions. So you don't have to be able to go to the meeting to benefit from it. But
Do you feel
school
like
board members come sometimes,
Mhm.
and you get a really good sense of kind of the bigger picture issues in the district, and then what is coming up in terms of solving some issues. So um, some years it's busier than others, but yeah. So I was one of the co-leaders for a couple of years, and now I'm on the leadership council. Um, and it's very rewarding, and it's very important to know about it as a if you're a special ed parent.
so some information kind of comes to you on the council, and you can kind of understand it by having a community talk about it. But do you feel like there's also um, any sort of can you slowly shift the direction of special ed in the district through the work on the council, or is it something that
Yeah,
feels
we
like
have. We've made an impact on changing some things, and it's partly it could be going to talk at the school board um, meetings to share what our concerns are, and kind of you know just so that one big issue in that the district is working on is placing more students with if they're able to be out of a self-contained classroom and into the general education
Mhm.
room. So then it's lots of discussion about how that will work, when that will work, what's all the shifts that are involved, um, and then just kind of reinforcing like why it's important. And yeah, so or sometimes we bring up topics that um, let's say it's a transition moments from um, grade school to middle school to high school to the transition program or adulthood. So those are, how can we have supports in place and to make that easier? And also, what are our concerns about the way the district does it, and what could they be doing? So
Mhm.
it's kind of back and forth. It's like we advise the district, and then and then do they advise us? I guess, yeah. So, uh, yeah. So it's things,
Something worth
yeah,
participating in for
things that, yeah,
parents?
definitely. So things that, and another thing that's worth participating in is being on the site council at your school,
Mhm.
because that's where a lot of decisions are made, and you don't even realize how much impact you can have if you're on Seek or on
Seek is the special ed advisory council. Yeah,
yes, thank you. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Or the site council at schools. I mean, that's where a lot of choices are being made. And special ed needs to have a voice at all those moments. If there might be a subcommittee you could be on, or
Hmm.
but yeah, I guess the more involved you can be, the better. It's because you're more informed, but then you can um, move everything in the forward in the right
Hmm.
direction. Yeah.
Um, okay, so we talked about Seek, Special Ed Advisory Council. We talked about a little bit about Pacer and a little bit about ARC as resources that people
Yeah.
that you've had access to. Any other resources or people or um, books or anything that has shaped your vision of what Michael's education and experience should be? I mean, did you have somebody say, "This is possible. You should do this"?
Yeah, yeah, that's a really good question. So I think, uh, if your case manager hears about something and suggests it, that's helpful. Like Interact or Young Dance. I know
Mhm.
we got that from you, but there are some really good resources, and we've connected with some people that are. that is their educational consultants that and inclusion experts. And so it really does help to know what is possible, what it can look like at some schools. So there's the Down Syndrome Association has some good resources.
Hmm.
There's uh, so Welcome Spoken Here. It's a website with Jennifer Summerness, um, Paula Kluth. I mean, these people have all these, and then just I guess I don't have a good list handy,
It's
but
okay. Yeah.
there's some really good resources, and it does really help
Hmm.
to tap into those.
I've been trying to collect more resources that I can kind of share on YouTube through this inclusion space
Yeah,
channel.
that's awesome. Yep.
Um, so, if you could talk directly now, like through YouTube or whatever, to parents, what advice would you pass on to parents who may have children with disabilities?
I would say to trust your um, instincts, and you know your child and you know what is best for them, and to have high expectations, and um, to be, and it's your job is to be an advocate for your child, so you need to do it, and uh, to make as many connections as you can, to volunteer. I mean, if you're there, so uh, if you want to sign your child up for something and there's no support, you may have to go and be on the sidelines where the other parents aren't there, but that gives your child an opportunity to do it. And then after a while, maybe you can step back further and further, and pretty soon they'll be able to do it on their own. So I guess, it's like, don't let other people put limits on your child, and don't you do it either. 'Cause it's
Yeah.
it just in your mind, it's like so many things are possible, and there's so many opportunities to connect. And I just wouldn't underestimate the connecting with the school staff. I mean, if you have a relationship with the teachers and your case manager, and there's trust there, it really works, because you may, it's like, certainly I don't have all the answers. I kind of know what we want, but I don't know if it's possible always, or if it's how you get there. And so if
Hmm.
you have someone that you respect and trust, and you've built up a relationship, then you can talk about it. And you don't have, so that's my thing, is like, if I can see that people are working toward the goal, then you can kind of, you don't have to be so um, vigilant about being in there and demanding things. But if you have the sense that things aren't being done, then that's when it kind of gets you
Yeah.
nervous, and
Yeah. Yeah.
kind of trying to go in there and try to find out what is going on. And that's when it doesn't work so well. But um, for anybody.
Well, we've been doing this for almost an hour. Let me just ask one more question, which
Yeah.
is, and then we can wrap up. But what are there any messages or thoughts that you'd like to pass on to parents, to all parents regarding inclusion, whether they have a child with a disability or not? Since if I mean, just to have a conversation to the broad
Yeah.
audience, what message would you like people to kind of come away thinking about for their own kids or maybe their school
Yeah.
in relation to inclusion?
Well, I think it's an awesome conversation to have with in everybody's, it's like, well, what do you see at school, and what what do you think about that? How do you think it could be better? Because kids and other parents have a huge impact on how it works for kids like Michael being included. Um, so yeah, if you model inclusion, if you're raising your kids to be welcoming and looking out for other people, if you have uh, those conversations, and you can step in and advocate for something that you see that isn't right, or I really appreciate it when I get help from other parents. Either somebody says, "Hey, my son said that he saw this at school," and whether it's something we need to address with Michael. Um, I just really appreciate that when parents connect with me, and then I feel like I can go the other way too. But yeah, I think it's a conversation for everybody to have. It's everybody's got something. If they don't have it now, they may uh, down the road, and so we all need to be looking out for each other, I guess.
Hmm.
And I really appreciate it when people do.
Well,
So,
well, this has been really, really helpful and generous of you, and thank you for taking the time to talk and share your thoughts about this and your experiences. I appreciate
thank
it.
you. This has been awesome, and I love all the YouTube videos that you put up, and
Good,
just to
good,
see the next ones.
good. Well, I really appreciate that, and I'll be in touch with you, and I know you have other people who may be interested in sharing their stories, and
Yeah, definitely.
whether they're parents or teachers or whoever else has something to say related to the topic of inclusion. I'd be interested in connecting, and again, thanks so much for sharing, and I just want to pass my greetings on to your family and to Michael. And Michael's an amazing young man, and
Oh, thanks.
I love seeing him every time. Sometimes we cross paths in the neighborhood, and
Yeah.
you've been kind enough to come and watch my band play
Oh my
before,
gosh.
and I just love seeing Michael. He's just what a wonderful kid.
Oh, thank you.
Um,
Thanks for all you've done for him to make him to get there. Yeah.
it's been a
It's
pleasure.
Yeah, so I think he'll have I hope a lifelong connection to you.
Me too.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm sure we will. I'm sure
Thanks.
we will.
Yeah. So,
Well, thanks again, and we'll sign off, and we'll talk to you again soon. Okay?
okay.
All
Thanks,
right.
Dan.
Thanks again. All right.
Bye.
Bye bye.